Question for you, Johnny, right off the top. Are you ready?
Let's go.
You got a pen? You might have to write this one down.
I do not.
Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe not. Which quarterback has been more durable during the 2025 football season? J.J. McCarthy, who's, I think, 22, or Aaron Rodgers, who's closer to 52?
Yeah, A-Raj has kind of withstood the test of time with this, right? He's proven to be the tough, durable one. Maybe those old bones just like have calcified over the years or something like that, and JJ's still dealing with the baby bones or something like that. But yeah, I got to give it to Aaron for making it through this whole season.
Yeah, it is interesting. We make these determinations on about youth, and we believe in youth. And we tend to be very skeptical and nervous about age. And yet, every once in a while, in this case, the football gods laugh at us all and say, oh, really? You think it's that simple? Well, I'm going to have the kid out again with his fourth injury in 2 seasons while Methuselah keeps, somehow, even though he can't really move like he used to, still finding a way to not end up with the kind of injury that sidelines him for any length of time. I said this earlier. I'm curious to know your view or get your view on this. And I'll again emphasize, this is not a statement about McCarthy's present and future at the position. But I now believe, whether he's an unlucky player or whether he's just one of those players who has, for whatever reason, difficulty staying upright, that the Vikings would be committing malpractice if they come to training camp in 2026 without a viable starting quarterback option, veteran QB, if you don't want him to compete for the job, which you should, but if you don't want him to do that, to be there just in case J.J. McCarthy is not going to be available. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think that's 100% what has to happen, Dan, when you look at how this season has played out. Certainly encouraging the last couple of weeks that J.J. McCarthy started to play better, and that Kevin O'Connell seemed to find a little bit more symbiosis with McCarthy on the game plan and what would work for him and what wouldn't. But just given the nature of 2 seasons now worth of injuries that are kind of adding up, you do have to factor that into your evaluation of J.J. McCarthy's viable future. I think they have to do the same thing with Jaden Daniels in Washington. I think they have to do the same thing with Tua in Miami back, when they did. And so there's no way that they can come into next season with the same plan that they did this season and have to scrape and claw for some retread like a Carson Wentz in the 11th hour to bring in. It just will not work that way. You have to have someone that can be prepared to come in and win games for you should J.J. McCarthy get hurt again, which is what we've seen 2 years worth right now.
Yeah, it's just, and none of that has to be a statement about his relative progress, right? How he is growing at the position.
Not his progress, not his ability, not any of that, but part of the cliche is the greatest ability is availability, especially in the NFL. And there are certain players who, whether it's their fault or not, whether that was a big hit that he took. Is it his fault that the helmet went right onto his hand and he's hurt? Not necessarily. That's not like a soft injury, but he's had several of these now. And his body, there are some guys who are built to withstand this a little bit more than others, and I can't make a blanket statement about J.J. McCarthy's ability to stay healthy just yet, but the early evidence is that he is a guy that's going to miss games at least here and there, and so you have to have a viable, good plan B should that happen, because you want to have him out there, and he has done enough things that you want to see what he can continue to do to lead this ball club, but if he can't be out on the field, it doesn't really matter in the end.
What is it? I think he's played so far total 8.5 games, correct? If you mentioned the benching, or not benching, but he was sidelined after the first half. Coming up on close to 2. Well, by the end of the season, it'll be obviously 34 regular season games. I mean that's just not viable. And we have even in Vikings history, there have been players who've been very unlucky from an injury standpoint early in their careers, Robert Smith included. And and for whatever reason, that evened out, and he ended up being a very good and relatively speaking durable player. And maybe that'll happen here as well. But the difference is it's everything we know flows from the quarterback position. And I think the challenge is going to be threading the needle that we're talking about. Because it's easy to say, all right, you got to have an option. But then the devil's in the details. Who's the option? How much are you willing to spend for the option? Who is even going to be the available suspects in that regard? So none of it, it's easier to say it, not so easy, I think, to figure out, well, who fits that? Who would be willing to accept that kind of deal, accept the possibility that, well, you're not going to start, but you might have a chance to play because the guy in front of you gets hurt a lot.
Yeah, that will be the question, and I don't have right on the tip of my tongue the available veteran free agents for next year, but I envision something along the lines of when Case Keenum came here, or I think you want to find someone who is an older quarterback who has started a lot of games.
Yes.
Maybe they haven't had a brilliant career, but certainly enough that they have been in the fire before. They've done it, and if you, again, like circling back to a lot of the conversation that we've had about J.J. McCarthy, you should feel confident if you're the Vikings, if you're Kevin O'Connell, that we have a good system here that a quarterback can succeed in with this coach, with these receivers, all of the above that we've talked about for so long. But there will probably be someone of that ilk, not someone that's going to knock your socks off, but just an accomplished quarterback who has been through it, who understands the landscape and knows what he's getting into were you to come here, who probably doesn't have a ton of other options out there, certainly not to start right away, but I think you can do better than what the Vikings did at the start of this season going into it.
There's no question. Well, if I look back on it now maybe this is an example of just they'll admit they just blew the evaluation. But there's a part of me that says there was a hell of a lot of arrogance and hubris in thinking enough of how quickly they could turn this quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, into a big-time quarterback, that they were willing at the start of training camp to have Sam Howell as their backup. And they obviously realized their mistake pretty quickly, right? Or at least by the end of training camp said, well, this is untenable. We can't possibly, we'll even take a shot at Carson Wentz because this isn't going to work. And it has to be, as you say, somebody better than that. Now, at the risk of being accused of recency bias, the guy who might intrigue me a little bit to at least test the tires a bit is the guy who filled in when Jordan Love went down against the Bears, Malik Willis. Malik Willis looked like, he now, how much of it is he's getting, he's now gaining some experience. He's been around the block a little bit. Maybe, they know how to handle quarterbacks there too. Maybe they think they got their own quarterback whisperer. Maybe he's figured some stuff out there. And again, it's one game. You're coming in on adrenaline in the middle of a game. But that sort of guy is I think an example of someone that I'd at least have to take a look at, who you look at and say, well, no, he might have a chance to actually help you for a series of games if indeed you actually had to go to the backup.
Yeah, I think it's a good candidate or a good name to bring up because I think that he is also probably just a step below, like, let's say Mac Jones.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because I think that Mac Jones is probably going to have a chance to go start somewhere else this year, like right from the jump. And so that's going to be asking a little too much, assuming that the Vikings do want to have a pecking order of McCarthy at the top and then a veteran below him. I think Malik Willis probably fits more of that profile than Mac Jones does right now with what he did in San Francisco this year. But yeah, I like that name. Hey, what about A-Rod coming in as the backup here? I mean, maybe he's getting a little old. Maybe he doesn't want to play 18 games or 17 games anymore, but say, hey, if we need you for 5 or 6, can you do that? And maybe he'd be happy to come in and sit in here and tutor a young J.J. McCarthy and be ready to put his cape on if and when number 9 gets hurt.
Well, here's the problem now. I really do think they blew their opportunity on A-Rod, not getting him last year, because I just saw on the way off the field in Detroit yesterday that the Steelers had a terrific victory holding off the Lions at the end. Huge win for that organization. And A-Rod is seen walking off the field side by side with his head coach, and he's looking ahead towards the camera, A-Rod is, and he's saying, it's the best coach in football right here. This is the best coach in the National Football League. So now, everybody assumed it was just going to be 1 year. They're in love with each other. If he's going to stay in football at all, he's going to be going back there. We blew the opportunity. He could have been saying the same thing about our guy if we had just taken the shot.
Imagine that. Wouldn't that have been something to see that? Kevin O'Connell and A-Rod arm in arm walking off the field. And now, like, the Steelers fans, from what I understand, want to run Tomlin out of there, but A-Rod is not going down with that ship. He's saying, this is my captain. We're going to ride this thing out, maybe do another 10 wins, and we'll both have to be back here. It's amazing.
You, over the years, you covered a lot of meaningless Wolves games, didn't you, before they became a relevant team again, correct? I mean,
14 years on the beat without a playoff game to show for it.
Think about it. So that's a lot of meaningless basketball that you still had to write about, compose, copy, right? Put words together. I feel like yesterday's Vikings-Giants game was similar in that regard, in that I felt for the writers, you got to write something, but then I worry that because you have to write something, you end up manufacturing something, because I don't think there was anything that particularly the headline in the Star Tribune, I think, was gritty. And it's like, come on, man. You can't apologize for winning ever. I get that. I don't expect you to. But there's just some games, just leave it alone. Just you get through it and talk about a couple of the highlights, and let's move on with the rest of our lives. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there's nothing gritty about beating a 2-12 team, 16-13 or whatever it was. Like, yes, J.J. McCarthy went down, okay, but that Giants team is terrible, just terrible. And so it was a meaningless game, especially, Dan, once McCarthy went down, because really the only thing to pay attention to on this team down the stretch is, does JJ's development continue here? Is he really figuring it out, or has he had just a couple of good games against bad defenses? And what does it portend for next year at the quarterback position? Everything else, it's really hard to get excited about or really get invested in when you're playing the Giants. Like, what can you take away from it? Like, okay, great, the defense has gone another game without giving up a passing touchdown. That's really impressive. But certainly nothing can be really taken away from that game against that offense because of how inept they are. So, yeah, that's definitely one of those games that felt like, a Timberwolves Hornets game in March when the Wolves are headed toward the lottery again, and all you're thinking about is maybe the lottery chances. There's really nothing redeeming about that one at all, I don't think.
No, and look, I know you have never complained about the work that you've done. You appreciate and love the job that you do, and it beats, for all of us, working for a living. All of that's true. But man, there's got to be some trauma involved when game after game it's like that. Now, in the case of the Vikings, it hasn't been that so much, as we're well aware. But that just felt like a slog to me, especially when the Giants, I don't know if this was, like an attempt at responsible tanking or just no belief that the quarterback could throw. But as much as I like to, run the ball, I'm sitting there screaming at the TV, try a pass somewhere in there. But it didn't look like Dart had any interest in throwing it. He didn't look like he had any ability to throw it. He looked better earlier in the season throwing it. And so by the end of that game, you just say, well, I guess I watched this thing out of obligation, out of habit. There really was not much redeeming value otherwise.
Yeah, Dan, do you remember the Timberwolves-Memphis Grizzlies game at the end of, can't even remember what year it was, where Mad Dog started chucking up
7 threes,
all over.
I was there for that one.
Just to try and lose that game. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Giants' strategy felt like here. It's like, come hell or high water, we are not going to win this game and improve and decrease our draft position, because I think it was last year or 2 years ago where they won a game late and then they missed out on all of the good quarterbacks because of it. And so they don't want that to happen again, even though there isn't like an A-plus quarterback right now coming out of this draft. I just think that they are not messing around, and they're making sure 100% that they lose all of these games, and so they have the best draft position possible going into next year. And when you watch that, especially in the NFL, like in the NBA, it's kind of par for the course, unfortunately. I think it's running rampant in this league, and it's the worst part about it. But in the NFL, there's not a lot of those games, especially with the Vikings involved. To their credit, they're usually relevant. And so when you get into that situation, you're like, gosh, this really stinks. Like there's no real reason to watch it, but you have to. It's the NFL. But it's a different feeling for it to be happening with the purple this late in the season. That's just ugly right now.
All right, let me get a quick break in. We got more with Jonny Athletic. We'll broaden out the conversation beyond the Minnesota Vikings as well. Don't forget Ben Leber later this hour. Vikings talking points and much more. Stay tuned. Part 2 with our guy, John. Oh, okay, call him back. Yeah, Jonny Athletic should be with us in just a minute. We had already a good chat with him about Minnesota Vikings stuff today. I think we are pretty sure we're going the distance until 6:30 this evening. Sam Bird is in for Guardsy today, who is, I think, already landed in Arizona on Golden Gopher Bowl coverage. And we have not explored any of the Vikings talking points yet, put together today, I think, by programming director Chad Abbott with Guardsy heading west. So there's still a lot to get to over the course of this broadcast. Ben Leber coming up later this hour. Johnny, brought to you by RBC Wealth Management, of course. Interesting text this is from Burl Oaks Chef Guy. Will you ask Johnny if he can chronicle when all 4 injuries happened from last year to this with Jay McCarthy? Odd that we really don't know, in my opinion, on any of them, really. And it's a fair point, right? It seems like with McCarthy, we've had some difficulty, for whatever it's worth, drilling down on exactly when most of these injuries took place, correct?
Well, I think definitely on the knee injury last year, he finished the game and then was announced later.
Right.
And then the ankle too this year was one that was a little bit more of a mystery. I think they retaped it. I remember that during the game. Yeah. Yeah. The concussion. I know that my colleague Alec Lewis went back and looked at the film and saw one where he really bounced his head off the turf, and so it wasn't specifically, definitely, yes, that's where it happened, but that looked like where it could have happened, and then the hand injury with the Giants, he was hit hard by Burns. And so I think that's a pretty clear, cause and effect with that one. But to the caller or to the texter's point, the first 2 were a little bit more mysterious, or at least were not anticipated when, it was announced later that he was going to be out for a while with those injuries. But I think that 2 of the 4, we can pretty much point to where it happened and why he was out, for sure.
I'm going to read you a quote and see if you can identify who said it and who he was referring to. I don't think this is going to be that difficult for you, but we'll see. You ask yourself, is this just one particularly bad year? Is it the fact he is a China doll? Somewhere you have to have some durability and resilience. Who said it? And who was he talking about?
Well, if we're staying in the modern day, I would say it's probably Chris Carter about J.J. McCarthy, because CC hasn't been his biggest fan. But
it's good guess.
You tell me.
It was Brad Childress on Tavares Jackson in 2007.
That's right.
Remember that? That became part of the fan lexicon for a while. The China doll syndrome thing. Yes,
of course.
And oddly,
that was a blast from the past.
It's relevant again to a certain degree, because that's sort of what we're trying to find. What he asked out loud is sort of what people are asking now. Is it just one bad year where the odds are against you? Is the fact that there's something lacking there regarding the durability? And of course, much later, the T-Jack story turned tragic, as I think most people know. Completely different context away from the Vikings, but that's what I was thinking about today. Again, this feels a little like the China doll thing again, where you're trying to figure the thing out, not suggesting the injuries aren't legit, but just whether there's some players who just seem to get more than their fair share and never are able, to be quite as bouncy and survive game after game.
Yeah, and two things on that. First of all, like with Tavares, it's different, right, in terms of watching it play out with him, because McCarthy is a slight build. He's a skinny, wiry guy.
Yeah.
Tavares was a big dude, like big, strong guy that you wouldn't have thought that these injuries would keep cropping up, but they did. I mean, that's the nature of the game. Bodies respond differently to a violent game. And then there are other guys like, Joe Montana and plenty of others that just didn't get hurt that much. But the second part that I'm glad you brought it up, because when we were in the meat grinder with Chili, it was a grind every day with those press conferences and things. But when you look back on the totality of it, he gave us some gems.
Yes, he did.
The China doll with the kick-ass offense. I remember he told Judd Zulgad one time that he'll drink a vodka as big as his head after they won the division or something like that. So I'm trying to appreciate old Brad now that I'm not in the foxhole with him.
Didn't he have a good one about the quote-unquote strip mall where Dante was rehabilitating? Wasn't there some controversy about that he was a part of?
I think there was. Yeah. Yes, I remember that was very awkward. I don't remember the exact quote, but then he also had the gem of all gems, and I'm one of us, and I can still acknowledge it. But he's like, Minnesotans are great. They'll give you directions everywhere but their house.
Yeah, that is a good one. Yeah,
and he nailed it, and I can't even dispute it. And then I remember the one time he was walking through the press box after I think it was after a win. Maybe it was after a loss, but he exited the stadium through the press box, which is always awkward as we're in there typing at
hammering away at him.
And, yeah, and he goes, "Oh, here you go. Here's everyone who came down the hill to shoot the wounded," and he just walked right out.
Yeah,
so.
That was the way out. You're right. Back in the day, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
One last item. I'm going to read you. This is a volatile one, so be ready. Wolves related.
Okay. Okay.
Where did it go? Here it is. This is from emailer Chris. Are you guys on the bandwagon with those celebrating Finchy for acting like an idiot against OKC? To me, he may want to take a break from berating the refs one of these days and try coaching his team instead. There's a lot to chew on there, I was going to say, Guardsy. Johnny, go. You have at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'll say this. I have said in the past, and I continue to believe that there are times absolutely where Finch is too consumed with the refereeing. He is one of the more vocal guys during the game. I don't think the referees like it at all. I think sometimes it does work against them, no question about it. But in that case, I think that was a Lifetime Achievement Award that was building up for not only the referees who are kind of always in his crowd, but also Oklahoma City and the way that he perceives and many in the league perceive that they are officiated differently. And one thing you cannot argue about that game in particular is after he got thrown out, the game got called differently. And there was 47 free throws and there was a ton of fouls called. And I think that if you were, if the script was flipped and the Thunder shot 47 free throws, the Wolves would be absolutely out of their skin. But it was, I do think, effective in that game in changing the way that it was called. I had him on the podcast on Saturday at the brewery, and there were 400 people in there, and he has never had a higher approval rating. But I do think overall, yes, Dan, that I think that sometimes he is too consumed with the officiating, and it would behoove him and the team and Anthony Edwards and Naz Reid and a bunch of these guys who do complain a lot to try and compartmentalize a little bit more sometimes.
Appreciate the help. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and all those good things, and we'll talk soon. Thanks, Johnny.
Always appreciate being on the show, Dan. Thanks so much, and happy holidays to all the listeners out there, and we'll see you on the other side of the year.
It ain't that far off. Thank you, sir. We'll talk then. John Athletic, Johnny Krasinski, brought to you by RBC Wealth Management. Quick break, and then we'll get to maybe our first Vikings talking point, and then prepare for Nacho Leber. Stay tuned. Let's get to a Vikings talking point. I think I labeled, I just would headline this one, giant horseshoe.
The Vikings have the ball with McCarthy out of the shotgun, takes the snap, four-man rush, throws to the right, and Jalen Naylor had it go off one of his hands, and it's picked off by a New York Giant to the 40, to the 50, and all the way to the end zone goes Javon Holland, unofficially a touchdown for the New York Giants, but we have a flag on the play. Javon Holland with his second interception touchdown.
Defense number 51, lined up in the neutral zone.
Let's bring it back. Let's go ahead and bring it back. Javon Holland, nope.
Wow, what a swing. What a swing of emotion right here for the Giants. The entire defense ran 100 yards down the field to celebrate with them. But a ball that should have been caught, Paul.
Interesting. Well, it was all for naught. Giants being the Giants. I didn't like the trajectory on that throw. I know the cliche, receiver gets a hand on it, receiver's got to make the play. I did not think that was a particularly outstanding throw, but just want to remind Vikings fans who constantly tell us we never get the breaks. The other teams always have the horseshoe. We tend to remember what we want to remember. That was a rather large horseshoe moment because it was fairly clear that no matter how many quarters that game went, 6, 8, 12, the Giants were not going to score a touchdown on offense. Some of that being the Vikings defense playing well. Some of that is the Giants offense not seeming all that interested in participating in most of the festivities. We have several more, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more Vikings talking points to get to. One of them actually might be part of the conversation with Nacho Leber. We got a lot of good texts that I have been holding onto and saving. 64686 is the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. So keep them coming, and I will try to hold on to some of the best ones. We are guest-free between 5 and 6. We'll also, I think, before this program wraps up, with Guardsy out, Sam Bird's kind enough to join us today. And not only does he have a top 5 at 5, actually the problem is we can't do it. If we do a top 5 at 5 today, we go with Leber to like 12 after. So if you've prepared it, we could still do the 520 sports fix. That's what we used to call it. So hold on to it.
Sure.
It just might be a little bit delayed. And we'll talk about your little field trip this weekend to Chicago, Illinois. Very good timing there as well. So a very busy program the rest of the way. Let's try to get a little bit back on schedule. Yes, I am aware of the incident in the Steelers Lions game of a player, a certain wide receiver, taking I wouldn't call it a punch, kind of a swing at a fan that allegedly he had some kind of a history with. I hope to get more on that story a little bit later. But let's prepare for Nacho Leber, Ben Leber, who got a little national TV time yesterday. I don't remember what Viking player it was that he ended up grabbing on the sidelines or meeting up with on the sidelines. And so very briefly, you got a shot at the handsome Ben Leber face. We'll talk about that and a lot of other things that probably aren't all that important because the game itself was not all that important. Leber is next. If you have questions for Nacho Leber, hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line at 64686. As many of you already have, we'll have the top 5 at 5 will be delayed, but we'll get to it via the 520 Sports Fix and more Vikings talking points to get to and a couple of other ancillary items as well. Monday Night Football tonight. Interesting little matchup. The Methuselah quarterback for the Colts taking on the San Francisco 49ers in a game that the Colts pretty desperately need. After a great start, they've kind of come very much back to the pack. Leber is, as usual, brought to you by the Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. Joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. I don't know how much of a detective you like to be in your role. It's on the sidelines for Vikings games, how much deductive reasoning you like to use. But do you have a handle on when J.J. McCarthy suffered whatever hand-related injury he seemed to suffer that had him sidelined for the second half?
I would say a fair amount of what I do is very Agatha Christie-like. I'm very much trying to decode things and figure things out on the sideline. Actually, no. I mean, I would imagine it happened probably on the series beforehand. And I didn't notice anything as far as him on the sideline getting extra treatment or looked at by the trainers. Very easily just could have been an oversight by myself as I was kind of walking by the bench. But my guess, it was, a pass play that happened before that, because as we all saw from the replay of the sack fumble, like he lost that ball before he was even contacted. So I think the lack of grip strength and obviously his hand being compromised is what led to that fumble.
I don't think we have any new information yet on availability for the last couple games. We've all, I believe, agreed. If we've agreed on anything J.J. McCarthy related, it is that the number one goal once the team was mathematically eliminated was to continue to play him and to give him as many reps as possible to try to gain some confidence with him, figure out what he is comfortable with, and then, just trying to build upon that. So for the sake of this discussion, let's say whatever the injury is, and I don't know if you have a Sherlock Holmesian or Agatha Christie-like prediction to make based on your detective work on whether he plays either the last 2 weeks or weekends, but I guess one of them's Christmas and the other one's weekend. But if he is unable to play the rest of the season, or they just decide, caution is the better approach, what do we do? I mean, you and I have talked about this before. I'm not one of those media jackals who is going to suggest that J.J. McCarthy is soft. Something soft about him. But he hasn't played very much, right? He's missed a bunch of games for whatever the reason. This is now a fourth injury. So how does that factor into, you think, the way this organization should go forward in this offseason? Can they count on, well, it's just bad luck, it's going to even out, everything's fine? Or do you start having to say, well, this is something that might force us to give ourselves some kind of an option in case this trend continues?
I definitely think it has to be part of the equation. And I think that they're in a really tricky spot, and something I don't really envy, because we've been around and we've seen enough players where it seems like they're injury prone and they go through a spat of injuries, and then all of a sudden they get a clean bill of health for years, and they seem to be fine and always available. So I've kind of seen it both ways, where that's the case, and then other guys just can't shake the injuries. I mean, even look at Carson Wentz. I mean, Carson Wentz has been battling injuries his whole life, and it's like, well, they're all understandable. They all happen under physical conditions, and this is a guy that's being a competitor, and, sometimes S happens. And but I think in this case, as you're looking at the future of this team, if you believe this team is talented enough to make a playoff push next year, then you might have to start looking at a situation where you have a stopgap quarterback, and you bring in somebody else that you can hopefully turn into a Sam Darnold. So I definitely think it has to be part of the equation. I don't know what they're going to do, but I would not hate them if that's the decision they have to make.
Yeah, I'm with you on it. I almost think, and again, as we talked about earlier in the show, it's easier to throw that out. The challenge is, well, who, right? Because that's where because I think in my case, I don't want it to be just any backup, right? You say, well, that guy's a backup and we just have to have somebody in that role. In my perfect world, it is somebody who you feel can give you a decent chance to win a series of games, right? And so how many of those quarterbacks are attainable? How many of those quarterbacks would be willing to come here? That's the open question, because there's a lot of suspects, Nacho, but there's not a lot of guys necessarily who I think could fill the bill we're asking for.
Yeah, and I think the dialogue has to be to whoever they bring in. I'm not talking about the compensation package,
right,
but just whoever they bring in. The dialogue and the conversation has to be very much about, you can come in here and compete. And this is not a job that J.J. McCarthy is just going to be penciled in and like inked in and saying like, okay, he's the starter. You're just here as a backup. I think for the health of everybody, the organization, for McCarthy's development, that it has to be an open competition, and may the best man win. And I say an open competition to where KOC is running his playbook.
Yes, right.
He is comfortable calling the plays how he wants to call them. Yes, he is adapting to the quarterback situation as it is right now. But if you want the best out of your play caller, then I think that you have to find a quarterback that can at least get you 80 to 90% of the way versus, the paring down that sounds like it's happening right now. So I think all those things are in play. You bring somebody in to compete, and on top of that, it has to go back to the old system, and it has to be the big plays down the field, and it has to be what Justin Jefferson excels at as well.
Well, it's interesting. I'm glad you brought up Jefferson because he had a much better game, although a lot of the throws were, I thought, just him making something out of not much, right? They were a couple of more, I guess you would say, receiver screens where I'm thinking 3rd and 12, he ain't going to get there. And he got there a couple of times. I liked that. I mean, because we've also talked about the fact that you have to find a way to get him more involved, but it's a very different kind of involvement necessarily than we're used to regarding JJ, correct? Justin Jefferson?
Yeah, and the thing is, like, does it work in the short term? Sure. I mean, they changed up their offense. Yeah. They put him in some other positions where he became the primary progression guy, where he's the first or second read, and oftentimes the number one read. I mean, it was absolutely the intentional target with some of these screen passes and some of these shallow crosses. But that's not his game. I mean, he's not built like Cooper Kupp, who, fit into this offense very well, and he was so much of a run after catch. He's not Puka Nacua. He's not built like that. Yes, were we surprised at some of the yards after catch? Absolutely, because he's an athlete. He's stronger than most people think. But if you want the best out of Justin Jefferson, he's the deep guy.
Right.
He's the guy that's running. You got to clear out some zones for him, and he's going to come in on a deep dig 18 yards down the field. He's on a deep over that's 25 yards down the field. That's where he excels. And I think that if you're trying to fit him into this role where he is Nacua or Cooper Kupp, I think you're setting yourself up for injury. I mean, he's just not built the same way.
This is an interesting. Well, let's before I get to a couple good texts that have come in. Are we at a point where you think, speaking of injury, and now in this case injury history, that we're at a point where we're going to have to start our search all over again for a big time center? Yeah,
I think so. It's unfortunate.
Yep.
Nobody wants to go out like that, especially in the season. And it sounds like, probably his career is in jeopardy because of these concussions. And I would say, if I'm one of his family members, I'd absolutely be pushing for that and say, listen, you've had an awesome career, and you're very well respected. Get out while your health is still hopefully pretty good. So, yeah, I do think that we are going to be in the market for a center, and I would even probably suggest a veteran center, just like we had to bring in Ryan Kelly as a veteran. I don't know if you want to have a second-year left guard. You got your veteran right guard, but then all of a sudden now you're breaking in a rookie center. I think that it'll probably be a free agent pickup in the offseason.
The hop splash, your hop splash, I should say, player of the game is?
Hop splash player of the game is Jonathan Allen, if you can believe that. I understand that if you looked on paper, the team was not great against the run yesterday. We had 30 rushes on the ground, and, we gave up a bunch of yards. Now, that was their whole game plan. But I thought when I went back and watched the film, especially early in the game, the dude was physical, man. He was doing some stuff up front that I think a lot of people would appreciate, and he was making his presence known. And I sort of really enjoyed, I think, the physicality of which he played with. So a lot to like. I mean, how can you not like 5 sacks, basically 7 sacks of the 2 that they negated? But the front and the secondary and everybody, they played a part in all the disguise packages. But I like the physicality of Jonathan Allen yesterday.
Do you, again, using your sleuthing skills, did you get any sense last night exactly what the Giants had in mind offensively? What was it, as a 15 straight plays, I think they ran. And then I think they tried a couple throws or wanted to, but then I think the QB got sacked. It may have been like 22 plays before they completed a pass. I'm not exactly sure. Was this part of some sort of master plan? Was this an example of responsible tanking? Was this how fearful they were of what the young quarterback might face? Because it seemed very strange to me.
Yeah, it was a coddle the confidence type of game plan.
Yes, yes.
So let's not put our young rookie out there and have to decipher and break down B-Flow's defense, 25, 30 times during the game. So, I mean, it was a little bit of a give-up game plan, which I don't think anybody really enjoyed, even though, I mean, they kept themselves in it. They did run the ball pretty effectively. But the other thing you also noticed was there wasn't a lot of intentional quarterback runs, which had been a big part of their offense because of the concussion issues with Jackson Dart. So it was a lot of just having the running backs handle all of the yardage. And then even in the passing game, there weren't those sort of read option type of plays where he has the run pass option to throw the football. And because he can't stop himself. That's the other thing. He can't stop himself from being a competitor and wanting to run. So I think they were trying to protect Jackson Dart in a lot of different ways, mentally and physically. And unfortunately, even when they did drop back those times, he still was hit.
Yeah, he was.
Like I said, 7 times, and 2 of those were directly in the head. So even when they're trying to protect him, they couldn't protect him enough.
What was the atmosphere like there? It didn't look very full. Obviously, the Giants were long done. And Giants fans are kind of used to a little bit of that. But what did it feel like in the building?
Kind of meh, sort of like what you saw on TV. I mean, it was, I don't know, maybe 70% full, if I'm being generous, and not very loud. And again, 70%, and I would say almost half of those being Vikings fans.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thankfully we do travel well, even to New Jersey. But no, it was a pretty dead environment, easy to operate in. And, I think the biggest concern was just how windy it was. I mean, throughout the course of the game, I was even kind of fooled by the forecast because it was supposed to be sunny and 48 degrees, 49 degrees. And I was like, well, this is kind of good football weather. But then it was just kind of blustery and windier than I was expecting, colder than I expected. And definitely, as you could tell by watching the game, the receivers had a hard time sort of catching the football. How
did you handle the plane misadventures the day before and night before?
Pretty well. I think we had the soothing voice of our captain when she came on and was like, hey, this is what's going on. She was very transparent about what was going on. She's like, I want everybody to know that we're not in danger.
That's good to know.
The landing gear still works, and basically it's better that the hatch was still open versus they couldn't get it open. So, all that being said was, we got this issue. Unfortunately, we can't go up to cruising speed because then you run the risk of the landing gear actually freezing because it can't close the door. So, when we had to turn around because of that issue, I think everybody was like, all right, we're cool. It's an inconvenience. It's no big deal. It was kind of fun to see the fire trucks out on the runway. But, as we've kind of talked about before, especially with all the London games and traveling abroad, Paul Martin and his staff, they do such a good job with all the logistics. I'm sure he was frantic. I'm sure, I wasn't sitting next to him, but I'm sure he was on the phone the whole time trying to get things organized logistically. But, they've done this a long time. They have contingency plans for when planes sort of malfunction. So we got on the ground. We were on the ground probably a little bit longer than I think they anticipated. But everybody was safe. They took care of us. We got a bunch of snacks. A lot of players got Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I don't know. I don't see how they can really complain.
No, it's not. Yeah, I'm actually proud that the Media Jackals. I sensed after Saturday that they were going to fixate on that yesterday, and not so much, in the game stories, because it's inconvenient. It's not fun. It's not ideal. But I don't think it necessarily has to be the end of the world, especially for people who travel as much as you guys all travel.
No, not at all. And I think that I'm sure that the coaches were able to communicate whatever they were going to talk about in their meetings and their breakdown meetings on Saturday night. Anyway, I'm sure they could get all the necessary information to privately to the guys and to the specific position groups. And it's not like these guys need to have KOC give them a rah-rah speech on a Saturday night, So, and I'm going to guess some of it was even handled on Sunday morning, what was necessary. So, it does throw you off just a tad, but you're professionals. It's not like we're on a 10-game road trip and this happens like we're, hockey players or baseball players. Those guys have it way worse. So if you can't handle that hiccup, then you're not much of a professional.
Did you, I'm getting texts about something. Did you leave a notebook at Giant Stadium? Is there a good backstory here?
Man, I wish there was a good backstory. No, I take pride in the notebooks that I use for the season. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the few joys that I have in my life is going to an office supply store and getting my stuff before the season. So, I go out and get this nice notebook with this really heavy-duty paper, and I know exactly where I left it on the field. And I ran off the field because, yes, I was being a baby and I was cold, and I'm like, I'm tired of being out here for 3.5 hours. Right. I want to run inside. So I run inside, and didn't realize that I left it there until this morning as I was on the power trip, and I go through my backpack to try to find my notebook to pull out all my game notes that I had handwritten down, and it wasn't there, and I'm like, son of a bee, I know exactly where that's at. So I went across the street, went to the office supply store, got a brand new notebook. It's fresh. I got a different color this time.
Nice.
And I'm ready to rock and roll.
So you're telling me no one turned it in at Giant Stadium, right?
No, I'm guessing the people, the cleanup crew, they probably flipped through that and they're like, well, this guy has terrible penmanship. I can't even read what this chicken scratch is. I'm just going to go ahead and throw this away.
What is the closest Ben Leber has ever come to having a confrontation either before, during, or after a game, regular season, preseason, postseason, with a fan? Has there ever been anything you can point to say, man, I really can't. Yeah, I didn't do it, but I wanted to nail somebody. Or is this completely like a foreign language?
No, that's never happened with me with a fan. All the fan engagement interactions that I've ever had have been really, really positive. Now, I will say this. There was a time where I was in Chicago, and I was wearing one of those baseball caps that just say soda on it. SOTA. Mm-hmm. And one of the security guards comes over to me and he's like, hey man, what's up with the hat? And I go, what do you mean? I go, I don't know, it's a slang from Minnesota, just soda. He's like, you sure about that? And he kind of got aggressive.
Come on.
He kind of stepped to me and he's like, you sure about that? And I go, yeah, what's the problem? And he's like, you're telling me that's all that means? I go, yeah, what's your problem, pal? And he basically was telling me that is like a biker gang or some sort of gang in and around Chicago. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm not a part of I'm not affiliated with any sort of gang. I'm like, I'm the sideline reporter for the Vikes. And he's like, side-eyed me. He's like, all right. And then I thought it was over. Then another police officer later on approached me more aggressively and was like, sir, what's up with your hat?
You gotta be kidding me.
The same thing. Yeah. And I'm like, boy, you guys are all worried about the wrong thing. Like, what if I was a biker gang member of the Chicago affiliate? Like, what's the deal? Like, I've got my wristband on that says I'm part of the NFL media.
Yeah.
Like, what are you gonna do about it, huh? That's what I want to say to him, but
you should have.
I didn't have the cojones to talk back to him.
So this was Chicago?
This was Chicago, yeah.
How long ago was that? I don't remember this story. How long ago was this?
Probably 3 years ago, maybe.
I can just hear it. You sure about that? You know, that whole attitude, we all know it. We all say, oh, you sure that's what it's about? You sure there's not some other statement you're trying to make? Oh, God, that's
yeah, I'm good. Like, chill out, Jim Pesci. Like, yeah, I'm like, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like, take your little gold tooth and, like, stop staring at me and stop giving me a hard time. Like, it's not that big of a deal.
So, you probably heard the news. I brought it up, obviously, because Metcalf, I think the league has suspended him for 2 games. He had an altercation with a fan over the top of the railing behind the visiting bench. in Detroit and kind of took I wouldn't call it a punch, but kind of a swipe at him. It's a very bizarre scene. So I guess he's suspended for 2. He's appealing the suspension. What I don't know about the way the NFL works is if you appeal the suspension, does that mean it takes a long time before they actually can act on the suspension? Or is it likely that he's going to still miss time this year? Do you know how that works in the NFL?
Yeah, I think this will be one of those, like, he'll serve it next year because there's got to be a whole thing of discovery, right? I mean, the act of it, you have to, like, respond immediately and say, like, man, you can't put your hands on a fan.
Right.
So we're gonna ding you for that. But if it does come out that the guy was using racial slurs,
right,
and saying stuff like that, then I would say, yeah, man, punch away. Like I think the NFL PA is obviously going to get involved, and if DK is saying, hey, this was said and that was said, then I think he's got a case for getting it reduced, or if not, just like completely expunged. So. Yeah, I'm kind of excited to see what happens. I mean, I know that, DK, I think he's got a little bit of a temper history, but nothing terrible. And, if this fan was being unruly in a really racial way, then I say he deserved a punch to the face.
So what do we got? 2 games left, right? They're both in the division, I think. What are we looking for the rest of the way? Just to get through it, or especially if McCarthy can't go, what's left to do?
Well, I think that's the problem here is if McCarthy can't go, then the season's been kind of a waste.
Yeah.
Like, I know that sounds harsh, but if you're not gonna make the playoffs and feel like your quarterback is the franchise quarterback that can lead us in the future, then what do we got here? Then we got just a bunch of injuries and just a bunch of question marks. I think the worst thing that could happen to this team going forward was to walk out of the season with question marks, especially at the quarterback spot.
Yeah.
And if that's what we're in, and I know there's probably some fans out there saying right now, like, doesn't matter. If he plays 2 healthy games and continues to play well, there are still some people that think that's a question mark. And I understand it. I disagree. I think if he plays well and continues to improve and we continue to expand the playbook, then I would say it's a winning season because guess what? We found the answer to the most important position in football. And if we can't get that, then yeah, unfortunately it's a bit of a failed season.
Now I'm being told I got to ask you about the airplane bathroom. Is there another backstory that we need to go over that you discussed earlier that's too good to miss out to not follow up on?
The airplane bathroom?
Is there an airplane bathroom story? There's 3 different people who are asking about a plane bathroom incident. Maybe they're just trying to get me going. I don't know.
No.
You're not trying to protect me from anything? Okay.
That might be like more of a Chris Hockey story.
That's probably true.
Maybe there's some confusion.
Yeah, there might be.
I've never had a story that I could share, or maybe like privately could share that involved an airplane bathroom. Okay. No,
I thought maybe it was an added mishap from the flight. Where you had to change planes, and there was to add insult to injury, there was something else. But maybe it's a little bit more decadent than that. Lastly, you got a little national time yesterday. Did you know that? Who was it who ran to you? What Viking ran to you towards the sidelines where you got some national camera time yesterday?
Yeah, that was Aaron Jones.
That's right.
Yeah. The funny thing about that is, like 10 seconds before that, I was closer to the Vikings bench, just again taking some notes on my notebook that I don't have anymore. I was kind of finishing some notes, and I just kind of walked over and found a little hole in the scrum of people on the sidelines where I could watch the action. And I was literally standing there for like a couple seconds before that play started, and then he comes running over, and it just happened to come running right towards me, and I knew he was going to stop, so I didn't feel like I had to like run out of the way. So I just kind of like stood there.
You did. You held
a
in.
little pat on the shoulder pad and did not realize that the camera that was to the left of me was the national Fox camera. So,
that was nice.
I got a couple texts from that. A couple people sent some pictures.
Yeah, I mean, it was. See, that's the difference. Me, I'd have been retreating like 25, 30 feet, just assuming the worst. But see, you're a former player, and you know how to. You're not going to panic. You're not going to overreact and look like a fool, like I would.
I actually, I do want to. I am very aware of what's going on, and yes, that is the last thing. I would rather get run over than look like one of those guys that's scurrying like a little mouse off the sideline. So I do feel like even though I'm not padded up, I know how to protect myself.
Yeah, that's probably true. By the way, the notebooks include now the one you lost, but like, so do you have them for like the last several years? Do you have you keep them in a special place? All the notes you take each year? I figured you probably would. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I've got a drawer in my office where I've got.
Yeah, that's nice.
For I don't know, I'd probably say the last 5 seasons of game notes.
That's good. I like that. That's good history right there. I don't know how often you look back at it, but it's just there's probably a feeling of that's part of what I do. I kind of like putting that together.
I wish I did, but I hardly ever look back at them because it's just every year kind of stands on its own.
Right.
So. I do still have my San Diego Chargers playbook. That's kind of fun.
Do you really?
That actually every once in a while.
Interesting. Is it a big fat playbook? Was it a big fat one?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's probably 200 pages long. It's got everything on there. It's got all of our offensive identifications. It's got all the terminology. It's got all of our plays and blitzes. Yeah, it's kind of fun.
218 guy writes, we've gotten more updates on Leber's missing notebook today than we have on JJ's hand. Which is probably true, because I don't think we're getting anything official today. I don't think they had to meet officially today with the Jackals. So we may have unofficially. You may have more knowledge, but I don't think we've got anything official on JJ for the next couple of weeks.
No, I've heard nothing official. So I'm kind of waiting, just like you guys are. I could, kind of refreshing my X account, but. Yeah, if there was no official press conference today, then we probably won't know till tomorrow.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I'm going to take a little time too, so we'll get back together at some point down towards the end of the season. Thanks, Nacho.
All right, sounds good, man. Merry Christmas to you.
Appreciate you. Take care.
You too.
Nacho Leber on a lot of things, and we didn't really spend all that much time on the game because, let's be honest, there's just that much. We could lie to you and pretend that there was reason to, but there just ain't that much meat on the bone. However, instead of the top 5 at 5, we're going to get the return of the 520 Sports Fix, which in effect is the top 5 at 5, just a little bit late, with Sam, who is filling in for Guardsy today. You want to tease us with any of your top headline items we're going to discuss?
Sure. We got Wolves, Wild, big night in Miami on Friday, and some football playoff stuff.